right? There's been plenty happening around Celtic and beyond, and even with the domestic action on pause, the storylines just keep rolling. Let's start by casting our eyes across the international fixtures, because there were a few familiar names involved, and, to be fair, some proper drama as well. It was a cracking night for Benjamin Negrin, who played his part in Sweden's 3-1 victory over Ukraine, a result that edges them closer to the World Cup. He lasted the full 90 minutes and made a real impact, especially with that assist for the opener. It was the kind of move that doesn't always look spectacular in words, but when you see it, you realize just how sharp it is. He picks the ball up down the left, spots the run, and slides it perfectly across goal for a simple finish. It's the sort of awareness and execution you want to see from a player at that level, and it'll only boost his confidence going forward. What also stood out in that match was the number of Celtic connections on the pitch. Gustav Lagerbielke started, Carl Starfelt came on early due to an injury, and suddenly you've got a defensive unit that feels very familiar if you follow Celtic closely. It gives supporters something extra to latch onto when watching these games, and if Sweden do make it all the way, there's every chance they become a bit of a second team for plenty of fans. Unfortunately, it wasn't all positive on the international front. Ireland suffered a really painful exit, and it's the kind of result that stings even more because of how the match unfolded. They were 2 goals up and looked completely in control, only for things to unravel late on. The opposition pulled one back, then found the equalizer just minutes from time, and from there it drifted into extra time before being decided on penalties. Ireland had their chances, but missing the final 2 spot kicks proved costly. It's one of those nights where everything feels within reach, and then suddenly it's gone. There was also disappointment for Wales, who likewise bowed out on penalties. That result raises questions about what comes next, especially with the European Championships on the horizon. There's still a sense that this group has something to offer, but falling short at this stage will linger for a while. It's never easy to bounce back from that kind of defeat, particularly when you know how close you were. Back to Celtic matters, and one of the biggest talking points right now is the situation surrounding Alistair Johnston. He's currently away with Canada, but won't be featuring in matches during this break. Instead, he's focusing on recovery and gradually building himself back up. By his own admission, there's no fixed return date, but there is a target in mind. Ideally, he wants to be back around the time of the split, though nothing is being forced this time. That's the key difference compared to earlier in the season. When he first picked up the injury, there was a sense that he came back too quickly, and it ended up costing him. The setback that followed kept him out for a long stretch, and it's clearly been a frustrating period, both physically and mentally. He's spoken about that mental side as well, which is something that often gets overlooked. Recovering from a muscle injury isn't just about being fit again. It's about trusting your body when you push it to the limit. Given his style of play, that's particularly relevant. He's a fullback who relies heavily on pace and repeated sprints, constantly up and down the flank. Any hesitation, even for a split second, can affect how he performs. So this time around, the focus is firmly on getting everything right before he steps back onto the pitch. There's even talk of arranging a friendly behind closed doors to help ease him back into match conditions, which sounds like a sensible approach. Another development that caught attention was the fine handed down by UEFA following the incident at Celtic Park where objects were thrown onto the pitch shortly after kickoff. The match was briefly halted, and it was always likely that some form of punishment would follow. The fine itself isn't massive in football terms, but it underlines how seriously these situations are taken and adds another layer to the ongoing tensions between sections of the support and the club. That wider situation doesn't appear to be resolving anytime soon either. There's still a noticeable disconnect, and recent comments suggest that any return to normality could take longer than many had hoped. From a supporter's perspective, it's frustrating, especially when you consider the atmosphere that's been missing in certain areas of the stadium. It feels like something that needs a proper resolution, but right now there's no clear sign of that happening soon. Then there's the issue at right back, which is becoming a bit of a headache. With Johnston still sidelined, the spotlight turns to the available options, but even there are concerns. One of the backups has recently pulled out of international duty after picking up a knock, and that raises doubts about his availability for the next match. It leaves the squad looking slightly stretched in that position, and it's not ideal timing with important fixtures on the horizon. All of this is happening while the first-team squad gets a short break, a chance to reset both physically and mentally before the run-in. It's been a demanding season, and these pauses can be crucial, especially when you've got players coming back from injury and others needing to maintain their sharpness for what's ahead. As the focus shifts back towards domestic football, there's a real sense that the coming weeks are going to define how this season is remembered. Celtic are heading into a crucial period, and while the international break offers a bit of breathing space, it also brings its own set of uncertainties. Injuries, fitness levels, and squad depth all come under the microscope, and right now, the situation at right back is probably the biggest concern. With Alistair Johnston still working his way back and no intention to rush him, the responsibility falls on those available to step in and deliver. The issue is, it's not entirely clear who will be fully fit when the action resumes. There was that worrying moment in the last outing where one of the options took a heavy knock after colliding awkwardly near the edge of the pitch. It didn't look great at the time, and the fact he's since withdrawn from international duty only adds to the concern. These are the kind of incidents that can quietly turn into bigger problems if the recovery doesn't go to plan. That leaves the manager potentially having to rely on players further down the pecking order. And while there's trust in the squad, it's never ideal going into important fixtures with question marks hanging over key positions. Consistency at fullback is so important, especially in the way Celtic like to play, with width, energy, and constant overlapping runs. When that rhythm is disrupted, it can have a knock-on effect across the entire team. There's also the broader challenge of maintaining momentum. Before the break, there were signs of a side that was beginning to find a bit of rhythm again, even with all the disruptions. Now, the task is to pick up right where they left off, and that's not always straightforward after a pause. Players return from international duty at different times, some carrying knocks, others dealing with the disappointment of results that didn't go their way. Managing all of that in a short space of time is no small job. At the same time, there's a quiet optimism around the idea of having a more complete squad available soon. Johnston's return, even if it's not immediate, feels like a boost waiting to happen. If he can come back fully fit and confident in his body, it adds a completely different dimension to the right-hand side. His ability to drive forward, link up play, and recover defensively is something that's been missed, and it could prove vital in tight matches. The mental aspect of his comeback will be something to watch closely. Players who've gone through repeated muscle injuries often have that moment of hesitation, not out of lack of ability, but out of instinctive caution. It's human nature, and even at the highest level, it can take time to shake off. The key will be how quickly he can trust himself again when those explosive movements are required, because that's such a big part of his game. Away from the pitch, the atmosphere around the club continues to simmer. There's a feeling that things aren't quite aligned between certain groups, and while it doesn't directly impact performances on the field, it does shape the overall environment. Celtic Park is known for its intensity and backing, and when that's not at full strength, it's noticeable. Everyone connected to the club will be hoping for some form of resolution, even if it takes time. Looking ahead, the fixtures coming up will demand focus and resilience. There's no margin for complacency at this stage, and every selection decision becomes magnified. Who's fit, who's ready, and who can step up under pressure are the questions that will define the next stretch. It's not just about having quality on the pitch. It's about having players who are physically prepared and mentally sharp to deal with whatever comes their way. There's also the element of opportunity. Situations like this often open the door for someone to make a real impact, to step in when needed and stake a claim. Football seasons are full of these moments, where unexpected contributors end up playing key roles. For Celtic, that could be the case again, especially if the injury situation doesn't clear up as quickly as hoped. And while the focus naturally falls on the challenges, there's still plenty to be encouraged by. The squad has shown resilience before, navigating difficult spells and coming through with results. The structure is there, the quality is there, and if the fitness levels can be managed properly, there's every chance of finishing the season strongly. It just comes down to execution, staying consistent, and making sure that when the opportunities come, they're taken without hesitation. There's also a growing sense that the tactical side of things will need to adapt slightly, depending on who is available. When you don't have your first-choice fullbacks, especially in a system that relies so heavily on them, small tweaks become necessary. Whether that means asking a winger to track back more, or adjusting how the midfield covers those wide areas. These are the fine margins that can make a difference over the course of a tight match. It's not always about drastic changes. Sometimes it's just subtle adjustments that keep everything balanced. Another factor that can't be ignored is the physical condition of the squad as a whole. This stage of the season is always demanding, and players are carrying the accumulated fatigue of months of football. Even those who haven't picked up injuries are dealing with the wear and tear that comes from constant competition. That's where squad rotation and smart management become crucial, making sure players are fresh enough to perform but also sharp enough to maintain intensity. At the same time, there's an expectation that the leaders within the squad will step up during this period. When challenges arise, it's often the experienced players who set the tone, whether that's through their performances or their presence in the dressing room. Keeping standards high, maintaining focus, and ensuring that any setbacks don't spiral into bigger issues are all part of that responsibility. It's in these moments that strong squads show their character. And as everything builds towards the final stretch, there's that familiar feeling of anticipation starting to creep in. Every match begins to carry a bit more weight. Every decision feels more significant, and the margins for error become smaller. It's what makes this part of the season so compelling, because anything can happen, and the teams that handle the pressure best are usually the ones who come out on top before we proceed. Subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Angel Di Maria has sparked a wave of excitement and intrigue across Glasgow after strongly hinting that his next destination could be Celtic. While no official announcement has been made, whispers surrounding the Argentine winger have grown louder, with sources suggesting that discussions behind the scenes are already well underway. The veteran, known for his flair, vision, and ability to turn a match on its head in a split second, would represent a statement signing of the highest order for the Hoops. Supporters have been quick to speculate about how his experience at the very top level of European football could translate to the Scottish game, and whether he still possesses the sharpness that once made him one of the most feared wide players in the world. There is a sense that such a move, while unexpected, is not entirely beyond reach. Celtic have shown increasing ambition in recent windows, and the allure of European nights in Glasgow, combined with the club's storied history, could prove persuasive. Di Maria himself has remained somewhat coy, yet his recent comments have only added fuel to the fire, with many interpreting them as a clear signal of intent. Naturally, questions remain. Wages, fitness, and adaptation to the physical demands of Scottish football are all factors that cannot be ignored. Yet for many, the mere possibility is enough to ignite the imagination. A player of his caliber arriving in the Premiership would not only elevate Celtic, but potentially the league as a whole. For now, it remains firmly in the realm of speculation. But in football, as ever, rumors have a habit of gathering pace quickly. And in this case, the idea of Di Maria in green and white hoops is one that refuses to fade quietly. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.